Hey, everybody, I'm Candid Frank. He's Aaron William Freeland, and we're here to talk about everything Maple Leaf. Red Maple Leaf, blue Maple Leaf, white Maple Leaf, black Maple Leaf, orange. Is there an orange Maple Leaf? Well,
Somewhere out there.
every kind of Maple Leaf. That's what we talk about, and we'll start with blue Maple Leaf because the blue Maple Leaf is right now at a point where we'll soon be able to stop talking about them. So we might as well get our conversations in about them. And we'll start by talking about defenseman William Villeneuve.
So,
The Marlies.
rather interesting situation for Chili Willie. He actually played a game on Friday night, which I was in attendance, and immediately hopped on a 5-hour flight to fly out to Los Angeles to meet up with the team for Saturday. They originally brought him on as a little bit of insurance because OEL was out with a lower body injury. So the intent was to have him go out there for insurance purposes. But at the end of the day, Villeneuve ended up not playing. The pairs that we had on Friday were Morgan Riley and Philippe Myers, Jake McCabe and Brandon Carlo, and Simone Benoit and Troy Stetcher. Now, he's been recalled a few times, but he's unfortunately never cracked the lineup. He's been ready for use and available for use, but outside of a few preseason games, he hasn't actually seen any action. He actually leads Marlies defensemen in scoring this season with 28 points. That's 3 goals and 25 assists in 58 games. He's also second on the Marlies when it comes to penalty minutes with 64. So far from a choir boy, but I'm really hoping he does eventually get into the lineup with them. They've got a few games left.
The whole thing of what's going on at this time of year, we talk about it all the time, that if you're not in the playoffs, you get to play the role of spoiler. Which is basically the biggest prize that you can go after as a team. But the most important prize, if you care about your career, is the ability to impress those in charge and lay down. And I want to emphasize this, folks, and lay down some film that over the off season, the organization, whatever it looks like, can have a look at what you've done. I want to emphasize that. So you might say, well, what's the good of worrying about how I play right now? Because the coach is going to be gone, just like the general manager is gone. So it doesn't do me any good. But there's something they can do, the next group, that can do that you can take advantage of. And that is play well, show how you play, because the film is immortal. It lives forever. And in some cases, if you don't realize that, it can live in infamy. So make sure you do the best you can, because you're working for next year's job. Now, it's up to you to decide as a player. This is what they've got to decide. Do I do my best as an individual, or do I do as good as I can, as well as I can, in the concept of a team? So that's what you're laying down right now. You're laying it down on film, and everybody's going to see it down the road. And the decision that's made clearly, and Aaron, I say this with not trying to be a smartass or be a dumbass or a nasty person, but none of these guys are going to effectuate a first line presence, because all these guys are going to hope to be second line down the other 3 lines, because that first line is reserved for the best players, and 2 of them right now have a place there if that's how the team wants to go. And so when I'm not talking about lines, maybe I should be more specific and clearer to understand. Top center, top right wing, top left wing, top defenseman on the left side, top defenseman on the right side. That's what you're fighting for. That's what you're trying to improve on. So that's what William Villeneuve, that's a reason why he would like to be seen on the ice, because he wants to show what he can do in the NHL game. He's conquested the AHL, and that's not where he wants to end up, I don't think, Aaron, unless there's something you know that I don't. He wants to be an NHLer.
No, he really does want to be an NHLer. I know that during the Olympic break in February, there was some hope for the Marlies fans as well, because he was up with the team for a couple of practices. He also had a stint in December where he was out with mono. So that's affected his play a little bit this year as well. He acknowledges the fact that he's not exactly where he wants to be with his game, but he's getting close enough that he feels that he could crack the lineup if given the opportunity later this year. If not, maybe at the beginning of next year, he could potentially make the team out of camp. He's only 24, so he's got a little more road in front of him. So in respect to that, he still has the opportunity to turn some heads.
Absolutely. The Sharks win again, defeat Maple Leafs to move into second wild card in the West.
Yeah, they won their fourth straight game and moved into the second wild card spot on Thursday. I know we didn't have a chance to talk about that. Zach Ostapchuk and William Eklund each had a goal and an assist. Colin Graff and Adam Gaudette, former Maple Leafs legend Adam Gaudette, also scored. And Alex Nedeljkovic made 18 saves for the Sharks, who are now 36, 31, and 7. They've won the first 3 games of a 6-game homestand and have points in their past 5 at 4-0-1. It was something they mentioned that they wanted to do. Tavares, unfortunately, was the only Leafs scorer, and Stolarz made 21 saves for the Leafs, who were eliminated on Thursday from playoff contention. So as it currently stands, the Leafs are firmly out of it. The Sharks are currently sitting in the actually they're sitting just outside the wild card spots now. They've been leapfrogged by the Los Angeles Kings, who are tied with the Nashville Predators, but still on the outside looking in.
Let's talk about those Kings and how they did against the Leafs. And there's a GM search that seems to be growing and/or zeroing in.
Yeah, the Leafs ended up losing 7-6 when Quentin Byfield jumped on an error made by the Leafs and brought it all the way down the far end and potted it. The Leafs weren't going down without a fight, though. Got to admit. Adrian Kempe had his second of the game. Samuel Helenius and Alex Laferriere beat Joseph Woll before the third period reached the 8-minute mark, and that was Los Angeles up 6-4. Matty Nye's second goal of the game at 13:29 tied the game 6-6 after Nick Robertson bought Toronto with own 1 at 9:37. After taking it 2-0 lead in the first on goals by Nyes and Lorentz, the Leafs gave up goals to Byfield and Kempe early in the second. It was all back and forth. At the end of the day, though, they managed to get a point out of it. It doesn't really do anything for them in the standings at this point. But as it currently stands, there's a new name that's actually been thrown into the mix now. Sonny Mehta, who's the assistant general manager and head of analytics with the Florida Panthers, has been somebody that's been whose name has been bandied about. Pelly said during his rather controversial press conference on Tuesday that the new GM would have to be data centric. Sonny Mehta has been doing a really good job with the Panthers in that regard. And they're obviously looking to replace Brad. He got the current title with the Panthers in 2023 after spending 3 seasons as the team's vice president of hockey strategy and intelligence. He's ran the first full-time analytics department in the NHL, serving as director of hockey analytics for the New Jersey Devils from 2014 to 2018. So he's a younger guy. He's just 47. So there's the possibility that he could be the next big thing.
Well, there's obviously a lot of talk, and Pelly did make it clear by mentioning he had 6 assistant GMs. It didn't sound like he was supportive of any of them, because he then mentioned 2 assistant GMs that are taking over control of whatever is going on. And he mentioned that they were, 2 guys that he had faith in. The fact that he said that about them 2 doesn't speak well to the other 4, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Let's talk about the Jays and Addison Barger and more injury news.
Yeah, on top of Alejandro Kirk going under the knife today for surgery on his left thumb, Barger was pulled from the game the other night because of bilateral ankle discomfort. I'm not 100% sure what that means. But at this point, the Blue Jays obviously would prefer that he not be hurt. But the thinking is if they pull him now, maybe get him a chance to reset. He was batting 1 for 19 to start the season, which is a .053 batting average. He was 0-3 on Sunday before being pulled from the game. It's one of those mystery injuries where we're not 100% sure exactly what's going on here, but better to try to take care of it early rather than later.
Brandon Little is down in AAA.
Yeah, that didn't take long at all. He's kind of fallen on Toronto fans' bad graces as it stands. Mercifully, he's been optioned to AAA, where it's hoped that he'll be able to regain his form. As hard as it is for fans to reconcile Little standing with the AL champs, he was good at least until last year's All-Star break arrived. He then regressed after the All-Star break. I'm not sure what happened. But Saturday, he gave up 3 runs off 2 dingers while recording only 1 out as the Jays lost their second game in a row to the host Chicago White Sox. Now, it'd be unfair to pin it all on him, but he certainly didn't help his cause.
Defensively, the Jays have sucked.
They have been. And you know what? Heineman skying that throw to first base was definitely not the way to go. It wasn't the start you wanted to see.
And the rundown that didn't work into becoming a rundown. That was something that Heineman, that was too bad for him. Let's talk about their losing streak and who are they playing next? The team they lost to in the World Series.
Yeah, we got the 7-2 Dodgers coming into town. First pitch goes in just under 50 minutes. They're 7-2. The Jays are 4-5. Robleski is tagged to start. Scherzer is tagged for Toronto. They need to break this. The long and the short of it is they need to break this. Unfortunately, the injury woes are just brutal here for them. Cody Ponce put himself out stepping off the mound. He's on the 60-day IL with a knee injury. Anthony Santander is on the 60-day IL because of his shoulder. Addison Barger is day-to-day because of his ankle. Alejandro Kirk is now out 4 to 6 weeks because of the surgery on his thumb. Shane Bieber's on the 50-day IL because of his elbow. Same with Jose Barrios, Jimmy Garcia. Trey Savage is on the 15-day IL because of his shoulder. And Bowden Francis is on the 60-day IL because of his elbow. Now, that's not to say that the LA is coming in with a 100% healthy roster either. Betts, Stone, Cousins, Knack, Miller, Gratterall, Stewart, Edmund, Snell, Kike Hernandez, and Evan Phillips are all out with various elbow and shoulder injuries. So this looks to be an interesting game for sure.
It's the War Imps Championship.
The Walking Wounded versus the Walking Dead.
There you go. It is what it is. Let's talk about the Raptors, and they're in a tussle now to stay out of the play-in part of the playoffs.
Yeah, this hasn't been a good stretch for them in the slightest. They had a chance to go in and make a standing against the Celtics, but Jaylen Brown had 26 points. Jason with a Y had 23 points, and they unfortunately couldn't find a way around it. They ended up losing 115 to 101 on Sunday. Nikola Vukovic returned after missing a month following surgery for a broken right ring finger for the Celtics. He had 4 points in 13 minutes with 4 rebounds. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure what's happening with this team right now, but they're having issues, and it doesn't look good. They've managed to slide into 4th, so they're in a play-in slot. I mean, it's hard to do worse than that at this point here because Brooklyn's sitting at 19 and 59, and they're not going to drop that far, but it doesn't look good.
It doesn't, and they've got to turn it around to do something in the playoffs. Unfortunately, with them being unable to beat the Knicks and the other teams at the top, Detroit, it doesn't bode well because the worse they do, the harder it's going to be for them to play somebody they'll have a shot against in the first round of the playoffs. So it's bad enough that you got to do the play-in, but then after you do the play-in, you got to play 2 of the strongest teams in the conference. to move on, which is going to be hard. Let's talk about tennis and Fernandez eliminated.
Well, she made it to the third round of the Charleston Open tournament following a 6-3, 6-0 loss to Russia's Diana Schneider on Thursday. Schneider faced just 2 break points, saved both, and put consistent pressure on Fernandez's serve. She was seeded 7th and had 15 break point chances, converting 4 of them. Fernandez, who was seeded 9th in South Carolina, saw her record this year fall to 4-9. Schneider's now won 3 straight matches against Fernandez to take a 3-2 lead in the career series. Hopefully she'll be able to pull it out, but it's been a bit of a rough stretch for her at this point.
Absolutely. Let's talk now about hockey and let's stay on the other sports in curling. Let's go to curling.
So right now we're facing a bit of a conundrum here, and it's something that happens every 4 years for curling. It gets massively popular and then this drops off the face of the earth because there's so much time between major marquee events that expose players to worldwide attention like the Olympics does. The idea this time around is something called the Rock League, which is the first ever professional curling league. It's going to be carried on the BBC iPlayer and BBC Sport website. There's going to be 6 franchises, 2 from Canada, 2 from Europe, 1 from Asia, and 1 from the States. Each will have 5 men and 5 women on the roster. They're going to play each other across the 3 different disciplines. It's going to be men's 4, women's 4, and then mixed doubles, with all 3 games happening at the same time. The franchise that wins at least 2 of those will win the overall contest. That's going to run for the first 5 days of competition, which each franchise facing off before the mixed 4s day, where each team will send out 2 teams. The top 4 after that all advance to the semifinals. This is going to be on April 12th, with the winners of those meeting in the championship match later that day. It's going to be an interesting take on it for sure. They're going to be using a timer to try to keep things moving and to keep it quick. So we'll see what's going to happen at the end of this.
Absolutely. Okay, we can go to hockey now, Canadian hockey teams, and we'll start with a team that's looking really good, Aaron, the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, they were looking really fantastic. You know, they had chalked up 8 wins in a row. However, they ran into a brick wall by the name of Markstrom, who made 18 saves for the Devils. Montreal has now dropped to the 3rd in the Atlantic Division. They are still, thankfully, keeping themselves out of the play-in spot, or a wild card spot, apologies. But they have, at this point, clinched along with Buffalo and Tampa Bay, so they're safe.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Tkachuk and the Sens.
So Brady had 2. The Sens helped their playoff chances by beating the Hurricanes 6-3. Both teams were playing the back half of a back-to-back, but the Senators seemed to find another gear, unfortunately, for the Hurricanes in the 3rd period. They scored twice in a span of 3 minutes and 42 seconds to grab a 5-2 lead. Shane Pinto made it 4-2, and Ridley Grieg then beat the Carolina player down there and beat Anderson. Anderson finished the game with 25 saves on 30 shots. At the end of the day, the Senators were much more aggressive in front, which helped them generate more scoring chances. But Carolina looked really, really tired.
Let's talk about Connor and the Jets.
Kyle frickin' Connor, man. 2 goals as they overcame an early deficit to beat Columbus 2-1 on Saturday. This keeps their playoff hopes alive a little longer and sends the Blue Jackets to their 6th straight loss. Winnipeg has now moved to 78 points, 1 point out of the final wild card spot in the West, which is interesting because the Leafs are well out of the playoffs and they have the same number of points. Again, I'm not sure how or who decided how teams would get in, but good on Kyle for getting his goals. Hopefully we'll see Winnipeg in the playoffs.
Let's talk about the Flames.
So Dylan Strome scored against his former team. The Ducks now have their losing skid extending to 5 with a 5-3 loss to the Flames. He had his 500th career point. Morgan Frost had 2 goals, and Joel Farabee and Matvei Gridin had a goal and assist as well for the Flames. Leo Carlson and Mason McTavish scored in the third, but the Ducks' comeback from a 4-1 deficit fell short when Frost scored his second into an empty net with 1:11 to play.
How about them Oilers and them Golden Knights?
I tell you that new coach bump seems to be working. Carter Hart made 31 saves. The Golden Knights managed to tighten up the Pacific Division race just a little bit. They're now at 86 points behind the Ducks and Edmonton, who both have 87. But yeah, after that 5-1 win, I believe Tortorella is now 3-0. So the new coach bump definitely seems to be working for them.
Yeah, I was just trying to see who scored in that game, and I can't get. Oh well, that's all right. Let's go with another Oilers thing. Let's talk about a Oiler hockey fan giving birth.
Yeah, so during the second period, apparently a spectator went into labor and eventually actually gave birth inside the arena. So it happened shortly after the second period. They were joking about trying to get the mother on air for an interview, but I don't think she was quite feeling up to it. So, very cool. Glad that the child and the mother are both doing well. We'll have to see if they get anything special from the Oilers after that.
Yeah, no kidding. Let's talk about the Canucks and Keller.
Yeah, so Clayton Keller had a statement performance on Saturday. He had 3 goals and an assist as the Utah Mammoth destroyed the Vancouver Canucks 7-4 at Rogers. His first 2 goals, a late first period wrist shot and a power play tip-in the second, helped Utah completely take over the game. Dylan Guenther and Lawson Krause each finished with a goal and an assist, while Logan Cooley quietly drove play with 2 assists. This now pushes the Mammoth to 40, 30, and 6, extending a perfect 3-game road trip and giving them a little bit of a better hold on one of the wild card spots. They've got 86 points. The Predators are 5 points behind them for the second wild card spot.
Let's talk about the Isles.
So there's a doings that transpire, and I don't know what's in the water, but after a 4-game losing skid, the New York Islanders decided that Patrick Roy would be relieved of his coaching responsibilities. Pete DeBoer has been hired to replace him with 4 games left in the regular season. They're currently 7th in the East with a 42-31-5 record and 89 points. But their hold on that spot is kind of tenuous. Actually, as it currently stands, after all's said and done, the New York Islanders find themselves on the outside looking in. After all the kicking and screaming is done, with the Ottawa Senators winning and the Boston winning as well, the New York Islanders now find themselves with 89 points. So they'll be in Toronto on Thursday to play the Leafs, and we'll get to see how the DeBoer era starts.
The Islanders, a team that was not cemented in a playoff spot, but well served at the beginning of the season. I think they were second in their division. They were like 4th or 5th overall, maybe higher, and things have just fallen apart for that team. And they're making a coaching change with only a few games left. They're basically throwing the dice and saying, you know what, get us in the playoffs. Maybe you'll do something. And that seems to be where they're at.
Yeah, according to Matthew Darst, the general manager, it did appear that after Patrick had made some comments calling out a few of the team members, it seemed like they felt that he'd lost the room. So instead of limping into the playoffs, they kind of figured they'd cut their losses, get themselves a new coach, and see if they can replicate Vegas's success.
Yeah, and we've seen 2 different ways to do stuff. We've seen Vegas and now the Islanders hire somebody very late in the season, under 10 games left, 8 I think for Vegas, 2 or 4 for the Islanders, and all of a sudden you've got the Leafs who haven't made a change, and there's just 2 different plans of attack there. Aaron, which one do you think is better, or does each team, you figure, make the decision for themselves that has no bearing on basically how a team's playing? Because those 3 teams, they had a different level of problems. You know, you've got one, Vegas is fighting for first place, the Islanders fighting for a playoff spot, and the Leafs right now are fighting for a higher pick. And if they don't get a higher pick, it's going to Boston. And it'll be a high pick if it goes to Boston because of a 6, 7, 8, or 9th overall. They're getting it, and they're going to get themselves a really good player. So not changing the coach for the Leafs is, I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to have that bump.
I think there's a great solution to tanking, and I think the PWHL has it right. Bear with me here because it's a little complicated. So basically, the way it works is in the PWHL, if once you're eliminated from playoff contention, you go into what's called a Gold Pass tournament. What that means is every team that's been mathematically eliminated for the playoffs then tries to accumulate the most points that they can, because that will determine where they draft. So if you're out of the playoffs with 5 games left and you end up getting 15 points, and the other teams behind you end up not getting 15 points, you get to draft first because you get the most points. So it encourages some competitive play even after you've been eliminated to keep the hockey watchable.
That's an interesting concept, because I'll say this, and we didn't talk about this before, so I haven't had any time to think about this. But what I will say is this, on the short thought that I've had, what it basically means is you can't bail on the season. Because if you bail on the season, you bail on the chance of getting a higher pick. So,
exactly.
So at the end of the day, the motivation to play well is consistent regardless of where you sit in the standings.
Yep. And that's basically what it boils down to, is we don't want people throwing games or playing shoddy hockey or bringing up all of their AHL players just to lose games on purpose. And that's what the NHL gets wrong, I think, is the fact that they base your lottery odds on how far down in the standings you finish.
How good you are at losing.
Yeah. And I'd like to see some teams put in a good, consistent effort. But again, this is one of those rule changes like the no escape clause and the jailbreak goal rule that the NHL will probably never adopt. But at the same time, it keeps things interesting in the PWHL.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. On to the new management team, how it'll be structured. I really think, Aaron, there's going to be no less than 2 people hired. No less than 2 people hired and 2 people fired. More. I have a feeling, because there's the perception for many that the Leafs are top heavy with management. Like they have a lot of upper management or people with upper management titles, right?
Yeah.
They've got a 90-year-old assistant GM, Cliff Fletcher, great guy. His son's a GM in the NHL. But some people wonder as to, is this a token position? If it is or if it isn't, I don't know. I have no idea. But I do believe I do think there's something to having it too top heavy. Like I really believe, and this is why I believe less is more, because to have a direction that's consistent, right? There has to be less input. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like the more people that are involved in the conversation, it's easier to distract the person who makes the final decision, because he's got people who are saying, well, you know what might happen if this happens, blah, 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 blah. And then general manager makes a decision based on what somebody said. And then all of a sudden something happens that was predictable or predicted. And now they're going, well, maybe that's the right way to go. And then you make a change. At the end of the day, there has to be, I don't know. I just think there has to be consistency. And every good team in the National Hockey League has consistency. And here's the thing. The Maple Leafs, ever since the Core 4 was adopted and it came to the realization the Core 4 is what they're going to have, they worked really hard at keeping the 4 of them together. And then everybody else was replaced over and over again, repeatedly. That's inconsistent. That's not consistency. And I think that's the biggest problem. And to change, to change the tires, you're an F1 guy. Changing the tires doesn't solve every problem.
No.
Sometimes you got to change something else.
I mean, as it currently stands, you got Shane Doan, Brandon Pridham, Derek Clancy, Dr. Wickenheiser, Daryl Metcalf, Ryan Hardy. You've got the senior advisor, player personnel, Dave Morrison. You've got 4 assistant coaches, a goaltending coach. You got Jordan Bean and Sam Kim. Those guys are vital to the team. If they ever get rid of Jordan Bean and Sam Kim as their video coordinator and statistical analyst, I'll be very disappointed. But like you look down the list, there's so much bloat. There's so much bloat.
Quality, I think, above quantity is the requirement. They have a lot of guys there, but in the hockey world, they're not big hitters.
No.
In the hockey world, and really what they need is quality above quantity. It's not about spending money for the sake of spending money. It's spending it smartly, and it isn't necessary for you to spend the most money, but it is necessary for you to bring in the smartest people. And that's what I mean. You got to bring the smartest people in. Now, am I saying you can't bring in a rookie GM? I'm saying for the Leafs, historically, they've made decisions that have hurt them because they've gone with rookie GMs. You remember Ferguson, rookie GM, Dubas. I think Dubas is a better GM today than he was when he went to the Leafs originally.
Oh, 100%.
Because he learned from mistakes that he made. And we know he made mistakes because we know at the end of his tenure with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he went, the core 4 idea.
Yeah.
Not sure it was a good one. Well, you're gone. So I think he's going to understand that it's not about not getting 4 of the best players that you can get. It's about getting the best players you can get for the team. The team has to come first, and everything that happens has to happen on the basis of the team. And a lot of the problems that we've learned that have become very, very obvious with the Maple Leafs, they're not one unit. We know that as a fact because of what happened to Matthews. And that's the way the team has always been. They have not stuck up for their teammates. It's Aaron, we saw it through how many playoff series? How many did we see of that? And we saw it over and over again. It was repeat every year. So somebody's going to have to come in and say, you know what? In fact, watch the last game. The Leafs lost in overtime. I'm sorry, I don't remember which game it was they lost in overtime. But Nylander was on the ice for that. He had the breakaway, and then he slow-footed it. He bag skated towards his own end before the other team scored. Yep. And that's the part that I find most irritating. He should know, and it should be ingrained in him, that this could be the last play of the game. I better do what I can to get to the other end. And if he had skated like he meant it from the beginning, that was a 3-way passing play. He could have made it there just get that last guy that's open. I know he probably wouldn't do it, but the fact that you don't try speaks to me and the problem.
Now, and you know what? The best thing we can do from here is rebuild. So we'll have to see where they go in the off season. It's coming up soon enough anyways. I'm not overly concerned about it.
But, I'd wave goodbye as long as it doesn't cost them draft picks or retention of salary. I would wave goodbye to those 2 guys and start over. Not start over with the hope of making the playoffs, but start over with the hope of building a championship, bringing in some new guys and have a better idea of what it takes to win, because the core 4 was not the way to go. Marner looks right now like he was the best of the 4. Right now, he looks like he was the best of the 4, but he was the only one left with a contract to be signed. But because of the first 3 that signed, he couldn't get signed. I don't care what anybody says. If they could have afforded to keep Marner, Aaron, the Leafs would have kept Marner. I believe that.
Oh, 100%.
But unfortunately, they didn't have the money, which speaks to the core 4 problem, where you're giving too much money to, anyway. He's the highest paid player on the Las Vegas team, but I don't think he's the best player on the Vegas team.
No, and this is the classic American conundrum. The more you pay for it, the better it's supposed to be, but that's not always true.
But the rest of the team, they can look at it the same way we had the conversation with Tavares coming to Toronto. I can understand the Leafs paid. Remember, we talked about this. Why was it okay for them to pay as much as they did for Tavares? I said then, and I will continue to say, that they didn't lose any assets. They got a really good player without losing any assets. That's not what happened with Marner.
No.
And that's not what happened with a lot of players. We saw a lot of players get traded along with first-round draft picks. And those first-round draft picks are the guys you don't have in your system. And that's where the Leafs have to change. So losing a Nylander and a Matthews, that's like, what is it, 13 and 11, 24. It's about $25 million that you could spend elsewhere.
It is, and it's a missed opportunity at this point.
So it's not
they'll be able to rectify that in the future.
The asset, if you're managing assets, the biggest asset you have is the money you can spend and the knowledge you have of picking guys that are actually winners. And I just think that this needs we talk about culture change. I think the culture is baked in as long as Nylander and Matthews are on the team, because it'll always come down to the question on the end of their stick. Are you the guy that can win the big game? And how hard is it going to be? In my opinion, you're putting a lot of pressure on Nylander and Matthews to produce in that situation. They haven't before. They won't, because it just gets, the longer they go with that kind of, that collar, right? The longer they have that collar around their neck, the tighter it gets. So, and I think that collar around their neck, it's an albatross that they can't shed. They can't change. It's a new type of player they need, and they need a new set of players and have them learn from the beginning about being a team. And this, Nylander and Matthews are the last bunch of guys that didn't understand what it was like to stand up for each other. And that's what they need. They need a team that plays for each other.
It's a hard lesson to learn, but hopefully they will be able to check that into the next season.
So what do you think the GM is going to look like? Going to be two people? Or?
Well, I think it's going to be a human. But as for anything else that's going on with that sort of thing, I can't really tell you, Frank. I really don't know.
And that's the last word for tonight. Thanks for doing this, Aaron. I really appreciate it. He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. Thank you for your patience, Aaron.
No worries.